In the morning, Ra opened his eyes. Izumi had heard the voice of that AI without knowing anything. He thought it seemed like he was dreaming, so he went down to have breakfast with his parents. He felt his hand tingling, and his mother told him it was because he had used headphones wrapped around his hand while falling asleep. He then had breakfast and suddenly jumped when he saw a spider. When he arrived at school, his friend Satomi sneaked up behind him to tap his head, but his hand suddenly, as if predicting, grabbed her hand. Only when he realized and turned around did he become shocked. His hand unconsciously squeezed her breast, leading to him getting slapped. His beloved friend picked up her glasses and asked why he did that, but he didn't know either. A little later, while in class, Izumi was nodding off, wanting to sleep. Meanwhile, his hand kept pressing his phone. He dreamed about last night when he was listening to music and noticed something crawling into his nose, so he sneezed and realized it looked like a snake. He planned to hit it with a book, but it crawled into his hand, forcing him to wrap his headphones around it to prevent it from getting to his brain. When his parents ran over, they thought he was sleepwalking because his hand didn't have any holes. He then woke up, and the teacher was beside him. The teacher caught him for using his phone in class. During recess, Satomi kept avoiding him, so Yuko decided to apologize on his behalf because of their old friendship. He felt unwell today, so he decided to go home early. On the way home, he was lost in thought about his hand. Then suddenly, a child ran into the street just as a car was approaching. So he rushed out to save the child, and his hand suddenly sprouted an eye and was able to stop the entire car. He hurried home and went to his room, then took out a knife to threaten to see if it was still his right hand. The hand suddenly transformed and had a face and limbs. It babbled and said it had eaten his right hand. He intended to stab it with the knife, but it broke the knife instead. Then it ran out of energy and fell asleep. His mother thought something was wrong, so he made excuses to keep her from coming in. Izumi searched online to find out what this talking arm was, but by the end of the day, nothing special came up. He thought he was the only one affected, so he dragged himself downstairs to have dinner. His parents asked if he was okay, and he just felt unwell. He knew he couldn't let his parents know about what was happening to him. He went back to his room and realized he couldn't really talk to the AI about what was going on. He knew that if he went to the hospital now, it would definitely cause a stir, and he would be taken for experiments. The next morning, when he woke up, Izumi noticed his arm was learning from books and the internet. He asked it if it could talk yet, and what it really was. It still didn't know what it was called since his language didn't have any way to describe something like it. It doesn't even know where it comes from because the only memory it has is when it tried to take over your brain but failed. It has grown up in your hands, so this is what it has. Your being chosen was just a coincidence, and it hardly takes responsibility for this. You, feeling frustrated, demanded to go to the hospital to have it cut off. It then told you that it's providing nutrients to keep your body healthy. If it gets cut off, you'll shrink and lose an arm. So instead of that, why not both live together? When it sleeps, you will still have your arm as usual. You then went down for breakfast, and your dad mentioned that there had been quite a few murders recently. Your dad then pointed to a spider to tease you, and you weren't scared anymore. On the way to school, the arm woke up and asked where you were going. You said you were going to the police station. It reminded you again that if you got rid of it, both of you would suffer, so it's best to survive together now. Suddenly it sensed another of its kind nearby, so it pulled Izumi with it. You didn't want to go, but it clung to a utility pole to hold you back. You had to comply and follow it, because it might have useful information. But when you arrived, this parasite turned out to be a dog. The dog saw the arm and had already failed in taking over a host. It became furious and forced the arm to tell Izumi to run away. Both of them hid in a playground, while that dog grew wings and flew over. The arm informed you that the dog was coming, and that they would have to fight here. As soon as the dog appeared, the arm shot up and stabbed it, taking its heart. With the heart gone, the dog also died. The arm informed that the parasite had taken over the dog's brain and only mutated its head, so the body was full of vulnerabilities. Meanwhile, a girl was surrounded by some thugs when a man came to help her escape. But after a while, the thugs came back and hit him in the head. But this man had been taken over by a parasite, so he immediately swung out and took out all the people around him. After that, he decided to look for another identity for himself. Meanwhile, the arm saw that Izumi had abandoned the idea of going to the police because he realized that without it, he wouldn't have the strength to fight against the parasites. He wanted to give it a name. It then told him to call it Migi. When they got to school during gym class, Yuko told Izumi that if he could throw one into the basket, Satomi would forgive him. But a guy seemed to have a grudge against him and intentionally stepped on his foot. Then, during the game, he successfully made a basket from afar with Miji's help. While putting things away, Satomi came to apologize to him and he promised to retaliate. But she wanted him to treat her to cake before forgiving him, so he reluctantly agreed. But he occasionally exhibited strange behavior that made her curious. Migi knew that Izumi's feelings for Satomi were rising, causing him to tell it not to mention such matters. The young man who stepped on his foot suddenly called him outside to talk. This young man secretly liked Satomi and wanted to fight to win the right to date her. Izumi tried to hold back, but Migi urged him to punch and hit that young man. The young man was so scared that he turned tail and ran, and Migi told him to go to the bathroom because holding it in for too long isn't good. While in the bathroom, he talked to Migi, making the guy next to him think he was weird for talking to Yuko. Then he learned from Izumi about the recent murders happening in many places around the world, and Izumi seemed to know what the issue was. When he got home, Migi also confirmed that the recent murders were caused by other parasites. Because, like the dog last time, that only ate other dogs, the parasite on a human would also eat humans. He wanted to do something to stop them before they harmed more people. But Migi didn't understand what was strange about other parasites feeding, because the survival instinct of all species is just to eat. It only cares about itself and doesn't like to care about anything else. Noticing that Izumi was showing signs of contempt for its mindset, like that of a beast, it warned him that while it couldn't live without him, it didn't need his body to be whole to survive. He then went outside to get some fresh air, and a parasite that was blending in caught his scent. Migi warned him about the direction of the parasite, so he had to turn away as if he didn't know anything. He then lured it to follow him and led it to a secluded place. He asked Migi if it was ready to help him fight against other parasites, because he really wanted to protect humanity, and especially the people he cared about. But Migi only told him that the guy was behind him. The guy realized that Migi still couldn't take over the host's brain, so he cut off his own arm to let Migi share a body with him. He was confident that two parasites in one body would be extremely strong, and if Migi hesitated, he would kill Izumi. But when holding hands with the right one, Satomi suddenly felt strange. So she switched to holding hands with the left one. The next day, while Izumi was having breakfast, his mother noticed something odd about him. Some days he ate a lot. Other days he couldn't finish 8 bowls of rice. When he arrived at school, he was lost in thought about being the only one who knew about the murders happening. While walking with Satomi, Migi suddenly called him, so he let Satomi walk ahead. It informed him that there was a parasite nearby. He used Migi's location to find out that the parasite was in the school. The whole school was then gathered by the principal in the auditorium. As Izumi was looking around, Migi told him to sit still so he wouldn't be detected. Then the teacher was introduced as Tamiza. Migi immediately recognized her as the parasite. As soon as she stepped up, she immediately noticed Izumi, and he knew he had been detected. During gym class, Migi knew that Tamiza, although a parasite, still maintained the host's life. Instead of causing chaos, he was still worried she would eat people, but Migi was sure she would keep safe those connected to her. In class, Izumi was worried because it was Tamiza's lesson, and Migi was currently asleep, but Tamiza still behaved like a normal teacher. However, at the end of the lesson, She called Izumi to her office to meet. Everyone thought he wasn't studying properly, so the teacher would tutor him. He then went to the office, and she believed he knew what she was. He still acted cautiously towards her, so she told him to relax, because if she needed his life, it would be over by now. If the two of them fought, there would be a lot of damage, so she didn't want to affect those around them. She then invited him to meet outside. So at the end of the school day, he arrived at the meeting point early. Miji indicated that there were 2 parasites coming this time. Tamiza had brought a nameless parasite. She and this parasite had mated, and she was curious about what the child born would be. She was sure it would still be human, but the problem was that she was now stuck in a spiral, eating humans while living as a human. But the nameless parasite didn't care about that spiral. It only ate when it was hungry, and killed anyone who got in the way. Tamiza was different. She wanted Izumi to just let her live, because she didn't want to give up this peaceful life. If he didn't comply with her wishes, his crush, who was studying in her class, would face some trouble. He probably knew that. The next day in class, suddenly the nameless parasite from yesterday attacked the school. Of course, Miji and Tamiza both know her. Then she gave the whole class a break and left, while the teachers at the school discovered the intruder. The attack teachers warned the students to run away. Miji saw that Tamiza had left and waited to see the two fight against that parasite. The students were then led away to evacuate by the teacher. They all saw that the parasite was real and that the school had truly been invaded, not just a drill. Miji said he had a plan. That was to use everyone here as sandbags to block that parasite's path. But obviously, Izumi would not accept that. You were wrong to believe in his plan. You then actively left the group to separate from the class. Hitomi tried to hold you back, but you told her to stay away from you for a while. Miji still believed that sacrificing others to protect oneself was a way of survival for animals. You then rearranged the desks around to replace the wall of flesh that Miji had set up earlier. Miji informed you that there was a difference between the two of you and that parasite. That was, he was just one entity, while you and it were 2. It could fight evenly with that parasite, but you had your own consciousness. So if you helped it fight, then both of you would have an advantage. Izumi didn't know if this would work, but Miji believed it had to be tried to find out. Suddenly, Megi sensed that he was nearby, and right below them. He then climbed through the window and thought that Izumi had just blocked his escape route. Miji was only left with one hand, while that body was completely weak and useless. You knew he was trying to confuse you. While Miji and the parasite were fighting, Izumi tried to stay calm to find an opening to attack, but the 2 parasites were too fast, so he couldn't see any openings, because Miji had previously said it would focus on defense, while you would be the attacker. Since that parasite underestimated humans, it would only be cautious of Miji, not you. You then boldly moved forward and trusted your abilities. With Miji's defense, you quickly pulled out a table leg and stabbed it into his stomach. He was shocked when stabbed. Blood kept flowing out, so he ran away to find a way to stop the bleeding. The blood loss was too much, and Miji wanted to chase after to finish him off, but Izumi was afraid of killing him, so he stopped. Even though Miji thought he was no longer human. He had planned to merge with Tamiza, but when he found her, she had set up a gas canister here and escaped, intending for him to blow himself up. The recent incident made the news, and people were unaware of the existence of parasites. A few days later, the school resumed operations, and students were able to go back to school. Tamiza continued teaching, but at this point, she revealed that she was pregnant. So the teachers were curious about her having a child without a husband. This made her start to feel frustrated with this troublesome life, so she decided to stop being human. She then met Izumi again and told him that she would start consuming iron and would no longer hold back. You tried to convince her that Miji only needed to live off the nutrients from you so she could still live without eating human flesh, but she countered that all creatures live and operate based on instincts that guide them. So she was the same. Her instincts told her to eat humans, and she would do that. You asked her what she planned to do with the child inside her, and she intended to give birth to it and then experiment on it. If it was useless, she would eat it. Izumi was very angry, making her feel uneasy and want to deal with you. Both sides were clearly showing hostility, but suddenly she said you were no longer pure, so she would just ignore you. That night, Tamiza's mother came looking for her out of concern, but when she walked in, Tamisa said she needed to go out for a while. She immediately realized that Tamisa was not her daughter and was about to call the police. Tamisa had to act against her and wondered how she could have recognized her. The next morning, Izumi was shocked when his right arm suddenly detached from him. Miji had returned just as his mother came in, forcing him to trick her into thinking he was screaming because of a nightmare. He wondered what Miji had just done, and had said it was just trying to detach from his body to act independently, but this method could only be used for 3 minutes and seemed only it could do this. As for the parasites in the brain, they couldn't, because if you detach the head, it dies instantly, not functioning anymore. That day, Izumi's parents announced that they would go back to their hometown together for a while, but he was worried his parents would be in danger from the parasites, so he opposed it. His parents asked if he had encountered any problems lately. If there really was, they would be willing to cancel their plans to stay with him for peace of mind. But he avoided the topic and went to school. He knew he wasn't allowed to tell his parents about his issues because Migi needed his body to live, while his parents did not. If they found out about Migi, it would eliminate them immediately because it had no emotions. His parents were sure that he was having some issues, but they wouldn't interfere in his matters because he wasn't the type to rebel like others. His father thought that Izumi might still feel guilty towards his mother for what happened years ago. Back then, when Izumi needed an aluminum plate for an experiment, his mother told him to get it from the top of the cabinet. He got it and fell, hitting his head on the kitchen cabinet, and a pot of hot oil nearly fell on his head. His mother reached out to catch him, even though she was burned, but she cared for him first before realizing she was burned. That night, Meiji researched guns to try to create one, thinking that if he was worried about his parents, he should advise them to move to the countryside, because there are fewer people there. Suddenly, his mother walked in unexpectedly to call him down for dinner. He snapped at her to knock before coming in, which made his mother a bit sad. He then went downstairs and told his parents that if they were to go back to their hometown together, he would support it. Your mother had to ask directly what problem you were facing, because you suddenly flipped from opposing to supporting like that. Your mother feels like you're not the Izumi they knew anymore. You still have to keep the secret about Miji, so you told them that you were scared of being alone if your parents left, but then you remembered that you still have friends. So they just spent time together, and if you felt lonely, you would invite friends over. Next morning, your parents set off for their hometown. During that time, a parasite was traveling with a man and suddenly got into an accident. The parasite knew its host's body was about to die, so it decided to take over the body of this man. The next day, Izumi woke up late because Miji didn't wake you up on time. The reason it didn't call you is that it thought you hadn't slept enough. As you walked, you thought about what Tamisa had said about you. You had changed and were no longer whole, basically explaining, according to Miji, that your body has taken in Miji as part of yourself. Since then, you have had some different thoughts from a normal human. You felt a bit worried, so you asked it if, besides the arm, your body was still normal, right? But it didn't say anything more and went to sleep. You suspected that you might really be changing, because both Satomi and your mother noticed that change. While walking down the street, you met the young man who had trouble with you last time. This young man is Magai and is being mobbed. You intervened and got punched by the fat guy. They wanted you to get lost if you knew what was good for you. But Miji had mentioned to you about the difference between it and humans, which is compassion. Wanting to keep compassion for yourself, you stayed and ended up getting beaten up. But a girl named Kana in the group told them to spare you. She came up and looked into your eyes, then suddenly gasped and asked you what you were. Magai also saw you. It was foolish to take a beating because of him. When you got to school, 2 of your friends were curious about your injuries. You hid it. However, Magai's group came to thank you, and they were determined to do something. In the afternoon, when leaving, Kana came to see Izumi again, but you ignored her and dodged away. Just a moment later, the guy in the red shirt sent someone to kidnap Satomi, forcing Izumi to follow him, letting you leave and leaving Satomi behind. But you still stood your ground and fought him. He beat you up. And Miji also had to wake up to let him know that he was completely unfit to fight this battle. But he didn't care, and still tried to fight. He requested Migi to give him control of his hand, but it was ready to fight back, forcing him to try to hide his hand. At that moment, Kana had brought a group of Magai's friends to assist Izumi. Magai's side was clearly more numerous, so it was obvious which side would win. Meanwhile, the parasite felt it could not adapt to a male body, so it tried to find another body to take over. At this time, Satomi felt guilty towards Izumi. She took him home. He asked her what made him different from others. She thought he was different in being cool, because he was kind, and even knowing he couldn't win, he was still willing to protect her. He then invited her to stay at his house, but she asked to go home. When saying goodbye, Migi felt a bit regretful, because he thought he could see that side of humanity. Suddenly, Kana wondered if he was talking to AI. She came to apologize, and when they shook hands, she felt something. So he had to go into the house first. Migi told him to avoid Sakana, because she seemed to sense Miji's brainwaves. Meanwhile, Izumi's parents were enjoying the sea when his mother was targeted by a parasite and stabbed. That night, after finishing his noodles, Meiji thought he was eating unhealthily and said his mother cooked better. So he told it to wait until tomorrow when his mother returned. Suddenly, his father called to report that he would go to the police station to make that monster pay for what it did to his mother. That morning, he still hadn't received any information from his father. He realized his mother had gotten into trouble and blamed Migi for suggesting that his mother go. First, it only suggested that having his parents go would be safer, and second, it sensed that a parasite was heading this way. He took a knife and waited for it at the door. It opened the door and walked in. And to his shock, it was his mother. It asked if his father had come back yet, but realized that he probably hadn't. Izumi was still too shocked to accept the reality that his mother had been taken over by the parasite. He thought his mother was just joking, and felt he should tell her the truth about this hand. Migi tried to make him realize and put the knife away so it could fight, but he threatened to cut his hand, causing the parasite on the other side to see Migi as pathetic. So it immediately stabbed Izumi. He collapsed. The parasite knew it had stabbed Izumi's heart, so Migi would soon die too. As the parasite was leaving, Migi decided to take a risk. It would replace Izumi's heart and save him. It helped Izumi circulate again and speed up his recovery process. At the same time, it would soon return to his right hand through the circulation process. In the following days, his two friends were quite worried because Izumi didn't come to school. They planned to visit him. Meanwhile, Izumi still hadn't fully recovered, and Migi had to take care of him day and night. Then he finally woke up and realized that he no longer needed glasses. The wound had also closed up. The hospital suddenly called to inform him that his father was still alive. He immediately got ready to visit his father. Just as he was leaving, he met Satomi and only told her that his dad had an accident, so he had to go to the hospital. He promised to return after a few days and left. While boarding the boat to the hospital, he didn't know how the parasite could know his home address, but he believed it would soon find out about the hospital where his father was being treated, so he had to hurry. Coincidentally, a girl sitting near him knew the address of the hospital where his father was being treated. Meanwhile, his father was reporting to the police, and they informed him that his wife was still alive, because someone had seen his wife returning to the hotel to stay for a night before coming back. The doctor believed that he confused reality with a nightmare due to being hit on the head, but he knew what had happened. Izumi then went to the hospital and met his father again. He knew that his father had seen his mother being killed by a monster, but he used the doctor's words to cover for him because he didn't want Izumi to know that his mother was dead. He understood that, and didn't press his father to speak out, since he already knew the truth. He planned to stay here with his father for a few days, so his father told him to stay at a nearby hotel. He went to ask the receptionist, and learned that the hotel was only 300 meters away, just enough for Migi to detect enemies. Although he hated to admit it, he now had to rely completely on Migi. He arrived at the hotel, and coincidentally, the girl who helped him was the daughter of the hotel owner. He planned to tell his father the truth after he avenged his mother. Then, he also heard the girl calling him down for dinner, and he realized his senses had become sharper. That night, Migi told him that it had changed. Its separation from his hand for a long time, to save his heart, had caused it to change. Before, whenever it slept, it could still sense the enemy waking up, But now it had to sleep every 4 hours, and when it slept, almost all abilities disappeared. Of course, the ability to sense enemies was the same. Next morning, he was much more refreshed. He brought the newspaper to his father and then sat waiting outside the hospital gate. He knew he had to keep watch himself. While Migi was sleeping, suddenly the girl from the hotel walked by. The girl was Maki, and decided to sit down to ask him a few questions. Suddenly, Migi sensed a parasite and pointed it out to him. He ran straight ahead, but Maki chased after him because she wanted to tell him a few things about the D. He ran straight to the D and got stuck, and Maki ran up to tell him he needed to take a detour to get past the D, but he just jumped up and landed on the D, charging toward the parasite. But he only encountered a guy who seemed to still be human. Migi noticed that this person had a parasite, but his brain was still intact. Suddenly, the mouth transformed into a parasite and spoke. It seemed this guy was similar to Izumi, in that his body was half human and half parasite. Both decided to go to the hospital to talk and keep watch at the same time. After hearing about his situation, Uda decided to help him keep watch while Migi slept. He was glad to have met a trustworthy person that night. Migi warned Izumi about something. First, about its cell division mechanism. It can split into smaller pieces, but these pieces lose their intelligence if divided too much. To explain why he was now in such good shape, it was because, when it split the body to save his heart, those parts had divided too small throughout, causing it to lose control of the divisions. So it was a bit worried that if the divisions reached the brain, he would gradually cease to be human. The first sign he encountered was that he could no longer cry. He met Maki again, and she seemed to like him. She saw him looking sad, as if he were crying inside, but he couldn't share it, which made her sulk and leave for school. Suddenly, Uda called to inform him that he had found the parasite he needed to find. He told him to run away because he was sure he wouldn't stand a chance. He ran into the forest, and Izumi followed in that direction. Migi sensed Uda, proving they were very close, but Migi had to sleep, so now it gave him two choices. One was to abandon Uda and run, the other was to fight, and it would leave him a weapon. Before sleeping, it transformed into a large blade and then slept. As for Uda, he was cornered and had to fight, but the parasite in his mouth made it difficult for him to breathe while fighting. So the parasite weakened as well. Uda was stabbed by that parasite near his heart and fell down, but Izumi had also arrived here. The parasite was surprised that he was still alive, but it realized Migi was asleep, so it was confident he wouldn't be able to do anything. But his speed helped him dodge and see the speed of that parasite. He jumped back and discovered Uda was injured. He would try to keep him alive and began to approach the parasite that was attacking him. Attack them, and know that you have the ability to win when you have a chance to handle it. Scar on your mother's hand made you hesitate and get hit, but it was immediately ambushed and severed from the host body. Uda is still alive, and his parasite acted on your behalf. He knew you couldn't act, so he did it for you. Uda's parasite moved the vital parts before he got hit, which is why he is still alive. Izumi can now return home with his dad. Maki asked him if he would come back here, and he thought that maybe he would in the future, so she decided to wait for him. That afternoon, he asked his dad if his mom felt pain, and he said it happened too fast and cried. He then saw that Izumi had fallen asleep. The next day, Kana and Satomi both sensed that Izumi had returned. During that time, Tamisa was still pregnant and had asked a teenage host parasite to monitor Izumi, because he could provide useful information for this species of parasites. The young man in red had met Kana again and saw that she seemed to be paying attention to Izumi and no longer cared about him. So that day the young man came to the school gate and was caught by the Magai group. But the young man came here specifically to find Izumi. They arranged to meet at the old spot, and the young man got straight to the point about whether Izumi was wooing his Kana. But he and Kana hadn't even seen each other for a long time. The young man didn't believe it, and wanted to start trouble. Izumi was now different from before. He dodged every attack from the young man. Whatever he tried to do, he couldn't even touch Izumi. Izumi didn't even want to fight back and left with Satomi. Just in time, Satomi noticed that Izumi had really changed, different from before, and wondered if he was still the Izumi she knew. Indeed, he was still questioning himself about that. But now he was still the Izumi she was familiar with. Kana was sitting in the GA yard and sensed that Izumi was getting closer, not knowing why she had this ability. When he got home, Izumi saw that his dad was still drinking all day. He realized he should hire a housekeeper. That night, he confessed to Migai that he couldn't cry anymore and felt like he had lost something important. The next morning, while going to school with Satomi, he heard a cry for help. He followed the sound and saw a dog about to die. So he took it to a playground and sat waiting for its last moments. Satomi expressed that she thought he changed because he used to be very shy but caring, but now he seemed colder, though she might have been wrong, until she saw him throw the dog's body into the trash and call it a piece of dog-shaped meat. She retracted her previous statement. He had truly changed. He asked Miji how he had changed, and it told him he was gradually becoming more like Miji. And that piece of dog-shaped meat would be what it says, not him. You later buried the dog under a tree and realized you should have done this from the start. Later at school, Satomi deliberately avoided you, so you decided to give her some personal space. Miji discovered a parasite looking for both of you, but had no hostile intentions, only showing signs of approach like Tamira did before. So both of you decided to meet that creature. The three of you met on the stairs, and the parasite introduced itself as Hyde and said it came to be friends with Izumi and Migi. It asked Izumi to show it the class it needed to go to, and you realized it was Satomi's gym class. You took Hyde to a corner to ask what its purpose was. It bluntly said it wouldn't harm you or anyone here, but it wanted to try eating and living like a human. Migi wasn't sure if what Hyde said was true, so it decided to only trust half of it, and told Izumi to leave. The reason Miji acted this way was that it was almost time to sleep, so it had to choose compromise to avoid conflict and expose this weakness. Izumi still knew that he couldn't trust Hyde. You showed clear hostility. Your face darkened. When Satomi saw that expression on your face, she ran away. On the way home, Kana used her sensing ability to feel Izumi, but mistakenly associated that feeling with Hyde. This made the young man wonder what he had in common with Izumi that she could confuse. Being pulled away forced Izumi to chase Hyde away from Kana. You warned him that you wouldn't hold back if he touched your acquaintances. Kana then noticed Satomi behind, so she invited Izumi to take her to the GA field. To help Satomi think you were familiar with another girl, you ran away. Kana then shared her sensing ability with Izumi, and you advised her to avoid the people she sensed because both you and those she sensed were very dangerous. That night, Hyde changed his face to that of a handsome guy to attract girls. Meanwhile, Izumi saw that his father was still burying himself in alcohol. He wondered when you became so strong, and during that time, Hyde had killed the girl he had just lured. The next day, when Kana was walking down the street, she noticed Hyde following her, but the young man in red stood up to protect her. Kana tried to stop the young man from fighting, but he stubbornly dragged Hyde into a nearby restroom. Her friend Yuko, who had a crush on Hyde, came to watch. The young man in red inside was knocked unconscious, and Hyde threatened him that if he caused trouble again, he would regret it. Yuko saw Hyde come out, and only thought that he was really cool. Izumi at this moment remembered when he and Satomi first met in front of the exam results board. She hoped they would be in the same class. Now Izumi stands here, but only receives Satomi's avoidance. Hyde noticed the signal from Miji weakening. Hyde knew Miji was sleeping, but if he radiated a bit of killing intent, would Miji wake up? But even if he did, Izumi still knew nothing and turned away. When Izumi got home, he saw his father sitting with the police, discussing something. You didn't want to disturb them, so you left first. Your father and the police had sketched the creature he had seen. The reason the police were willing to believe him was that rumors about these creatures had been surfacing quite a bit recently. Tamira was now with a man. He told Tamira that humans were toxins to this world, and they needed to eliminate those toxins. That night, your father decided to tell Izumi the truth. Both of them just spoke and bowed their heads. This was the first time your father admitted to you that your mother had passed away. Meanwhile, Yuko returned home and saw the sketch of the parasite made by her brother also in the investigation. She showed her brother the sketch of Hyde, and he praised her. The next morning, Yuko saw Hyde waiting for someone, when suddenly a baseball hit him in the head. His head had a large dent, but after he covered it with his hand, the dent disappeared. So Yuko immediately realized that Hyde had a fake face. Izumi decided that today he must make amends with Satomi. But as soon as you opened your mouth, Miji warned you that Hyde was radiating killing intent. And that killing intent was aimed at that young man in red. The young man was looking for trouble and brought his buddies to surround a monster. Miji knew for sure that Hyde would slaughter that group, so you had to put the amends on hold to run and save people. Hyde was currently being surrounded, but he wanted that group to come at him all at once, so he could deal with them before Izumi arrived. But Izumi jumped over the wall from behind to enter, catching Hyde by surprise. Hyde wanted Izumi to stay calm because he was the victim, but Izumi would handle this group instead of Hyde. That group thought you were trying to be a hero once again, but you were doing this not to save Hyde, but to save them. You called out the ringleader by name. As he threw a punch, you blocked it. Seeing your terrifying expression made him sweat and call his underlings to retreat. You then returned to meet Satomi, because she was holding the bag waiting for you. You intended to take this opportunity to make amends, but Hyde appeared from behind. This made Izumi raise his guard. You drove him away and told Satomi that Hyde might seem gentle on the outside, but don't let that deceive you. In fact, you spoke more harshly, causing Satomi to realize that you had truly changed. You were no longer the Izumi she knew. Because you couldn't explain the reason, both of you could consider it over here. Miki noted that you had become less emotional and were thinking more logically, so it was no surprise that others saw you change so much. Meanwhile, Yuko had followed Hyde and discovered he had changed. Her face suspected he was the monster her brother was investigating. So she went home to ask her brother about the case he was investigating, whether the monster he was investigating could really change its face. Her brother confirmed that it could. That night, Yuko wasn't sure whether to publicly disclose what she knew or not, but then she thought she should tell Hyde about it, in hope he would compromise with her about not harming anyone. The next day, they both agreed to meet in an old classroom. Yuko directly asked him if he was a monster that eats people. He knew he had been exposed, so he asked her if she had revealed this to anyone. Izumi was sitting in class when Migi sensed the killing intent, so Izumi immediately stood up. He decided to leave the classroom. Meanwhile, Yuko had been cautious from the beginning and threw an acid bottle at him. The acid splashed on the parasite, causing him pain. As Yuko climbed out the window, the parasite lunged at her, causing her to fall. Fortunately, a tree broke her fall, so she wasn't seriously injured. The students outside, who were in gym class, noticed something in the room and went to check it out. At this moment, Miji informed that Hyde suddenly had disjointed thoughts, as if he was being affected by something. The two students reported back to the teacher, and the teacher would come to check it out too. Hyde was currently trying to find someone to restore his face. The teacher and the two young men encountered each other. Hyde was very unfortunate to be split in two by him. Another teacher discovered this and immediately ordered the entire school to evacuate. At this point, the whole school still thought it was a prank like the last time, so they remained relaxed. Meanwhile, Izumi heard that Hyde was in Satomi's class. Suddenly, students from that class ran out, making him worry for Satomi. So he ran to check and saw many people had been killed there. He panicked and shouted, forcing Miji to try to calm him down. He then listened and knew there were 3 people nearby. He ran to meet Satomi, who was still safe, along with 2 young men there. He then called all 3 to follow him outside, but the 2 young men saw him coming from the direction of the dead bodies and asked if he was human or not. The beast within him was awakened, causing the 2 young men to be scared and run back towards Hyde. He had to carry Satomi to a nearby classroom. Just as Hyde was about to enter, he jumped out of the window and took Satomi to safety. He knew Satomi was panicked. After handing her over to the medical staff, he left to finish the remaining work. But Miji thought it was better to let the police handle it. However, the police were also helpless against Hyde, as they couldn't destroy its head or heart. So Miji instructed him to throw stones from a distance. Since Hyde was going up to the rooftop, he went to a roof far out of Hyde's detection range, and he handed the stone to Migi. It threw a straight shot into Hyde's heart. When he reached the rooftop and then ended it, he was the police. Then it was just a matter of cleaning up. Statistically, there were 17 deaths, but the police still concealed the truth about the parasites. Izumi didn't understand, so Migi informed him. If the police revealed the truth, how would the public react? They would only panic more. Then they would try to figure out how to catch the parasites. Izumi suggested cooperating with the police, but Migi said no, as it didn't want to become allies with humans. It may not have emotions, but if you put yourself in its position, would you be willing to team up with another race to kill your own kind? But the government at this time decided to announce to the public about this species of parasites, as they had discovered important characteristics of the parasites through Hyde's corpse. Do you all remember what Migi said about being able to divide itself? This doctor informed us how to distinguish the parasites through that division process. Specifically, just pull a person's hair. If the hair is normal, then there's no problem, but if it's a parasite, that hair will be a small division of the parasite, so it will wiggle for a while before stopping. If the parasite wears a wig, then eyelashes or nose hairs can be tested too. The next day, Izumi met Satomi again. She wanted to thank him for helping her last time. Both were pleased to hear that Yuko was stable again, and now the government had launched a movement to greet each other by pulling each other's hair instead of announcing directly about the parasites. That night, a girl who had just gone out for drinks with colleagues pulled his hair to test and saw it wiggle. But that was also the last thing she saw. Meanwhile, Kana was dreaming a beautiful dream when she was chased by a bunch of monsters, and then Prince Izumi came to save her. The next morning, she remembered what kind of shock Hyde had caused, and how Izumi warned her about him. She suspected Izumi could be a parasite, so she intended to pull his hair, but he stopped her. He told her if she wanted his hair, she should ask, not do it on her own. Once he proved he wasn't a parasite, he moved on. Kana ran after him and wanted to know more about how he could sense danger and warn her, but he still didn't want to say, as Migi believed it didn't trust Kana. Kana then expressed her abilities and made a decision. If she sensed someone like him, she would pull their hair to test, but he stopped her, as that was too dangerous. Migi told him to step aside to talk, so he reluctantly went ahead, and Satomi saw Izumi getting close to another girl from behind. Migi bluntly said he absolutely needed to avoid Sakana, but he worried she would get into trouble if he wasn't careful. Meanwhile, Satomi asked Kana if she noticed Izumi was different than before, but to Kana, Izumi was still as strong as he used to be, so she just thought Satomi was overthinking. If she continued to doubt Izumi, she would really lose him, but that made Kana happy, as she saw an opportunity to get closer to Izumi. In the meantime, a parasite in an extremely muscular body arrived at a Yakuza office to cause trouble. It gave the young man guarding the door a fatal blow to the head and walked in boldly. It moved at extreme speed, and its strikes were powerful. One punch can crack a skull. Even if you get cut by a knife on your hand, it doesn't matter. If shot in the leg, the speed is still too fast. Getting slashed in the head won't kill you. The last one asked why he attacked. He was just testing his strength against an armed army. When he was carried out, a few people surrounded him to chase after, but he quickly vanished and grabbed one person to later change hosts. When Izumi heard the news, he wasn't sure if this was caused by a parasite because there was no reason for it to cause such a massacre. The next day, Izumi went out with Satomi for a day. They both went to eat, and Izumi started talking about parasites eating humans like humans eat other creatures. They then went outside, where Satomi played with a puppy. Izumi did not. While sitting by the road, Izumi saw a little boy, unable to catch up with his mother, crying and saying he hated her. His heart suddenly ached without understanding why. When Satomi asked, he just said he felt a bit short of breath. It must be because he was really getting old. She intended to ask about what happened during his visit to his dad, but then she dropped it. That afternoon, when they said goodbye to go home, Izumi kissed Satomi goodbye and left. Kana, who was behind the Kia, witnessed everything. Satomi still felt he was too different, even though she didn't want to say it. Kana knew from the beginning that she had no chance, but still persisted. The next day, Izumi went to meet Kana because she wanted one last favor from him. He and Migi arrived at the meeting point and discovered parasites nearby, so they ran off to find them. There were a total of 8 parasites, 6 were in the Kia, and 2 were below. Izumi was quickly detected, but they didn't take any action. Met Kana and went with her. That night, Migi and Izumi discussed what the parasites were trying to do by calling for elections. One possibility is that they were interested in doing so. The other is that they were trying to build a ruling organization so that when they ate humans and disposed of the bodies, it would be easier to cover up. This dangerous possibility was high, so Izumi knew he had to do something. That morning when he met Kana, she said she intentionally went near the dangerous parasites because she knew he would be there. According to her, she could only sense 4 of them, so she must not be able to sense as strongly as Migi. The next day, Izumi went to the lair of the parasites, disguised as Kia politicians. Migi warned him about the danger of entering here, but he needed to verify how many there were. However, the person he met was Kana. He went with her to the lakeside to talk. He intended to inform her about the parasites when a young man in a red shirt approached and wanted to speak privately with Kana. Not wanting to intrude, Izumi planned to tell her later. That night, Migi warned him not to foolishly say anything that could harm her and himself, because he definitely wouldn't want to see his right hand cut off. However, the next morning, he still went to meet Kana while Migi went to sleep to tell her the truth about his right hand. But she thought he was making this up because he wanted to completely end things with her. She wanted to see his right hand transform before she would believe him. She decided to temporarily trust him and see this as a secret between the two of them. She still wanted to see his arm fully transform one day. Next day, when he was heading home with Satomi, Kana was behind a car hoping he would sense her and turn back to look at her. But he just walked straight with Satomi, and only Migi turned back to look. The girl in red came looking for him, and saw her following Izumi even though he had someone else, but she thought he was also following her, which made him sulk and give up. That evening, Migi and Izumi saw that the parasite Kia had been elected. Migi also informed him that it sensed Kana. This afternoon, she was emitting a kind of aura like the one parasites use to find each other, but Kana's was still weak. But as she focused on her abilities, no one could be sure how much stronger she could become. Izumi also confessed that he told Kana about Migi while it was sleeping, but she didn't believe him. Migi had anticipated this. Izumi tried to convince Migi to show itself to Kana so she would be scared and not get him into trouble, believing that Kana would not tell anyone. If she did say anything, he would deny it and pretend she was just paranoid, as the government couldn't detect him through her pulling his hair. Later, he intended to meet Kana, but remembered he had an appointment with Satomi. But when he was almost set for the schedule, he arranged to meet Kana at the train station. Migi sensed that 2 parasites were passing by, so it told Izumi to act normal so they wouldn't detect him. After that, when he called Kana, she had tied a strand of his hair to her hand to use the sensing ability to find him. At the same time, she wasn't carrying her phone, so Izumi couldn't call her. Fortunately, Migi sensed he was getting close to a parasite, so he had to run following the directions. Meanwhile, Kana had found a parasite that was eating a human. Instead of Izumi, she was attacked by it and got injured. As she was running to find Izumi, he arrived just in time, but only to see her stabbed. Izumi got angry and let Migi defend, while he charged in and grabbed the parasite's heart. Kana was right to believe he would come, but she could only say a few words before leaving. On the day of Kana's funeral, the police kept an eye on Izumi, because he was the one who found Kana, and his mother was also killed by a parasite. They also checked and questioned him, so they just thought he was upset. They didn't know that AI was the one who killed the parasite, because the parasite had a hole gouged out and was missing its heart, and it had been slammed against the wall with enough force to break it. A human couldn't do that. So there must have been more than 2 parasites involved. The young man who was following Kana came to question Izumi for not being able to protect Kana. He even remained calm enough not to shed a single tear. Izumi was hit on the forehead, so he had to respond. To leave, he admitted that he might no longer be human, since Kana died in front of him, and he didn't shed a single tear, but at least his rationality was still intact. In the following days, Izumi was asked by classmates about his involvement in the recent murder case, and he avoided the topic and went home. When he met Satomi again, he intended to apologize for canceling their date that day, but she only thought he was sad because So many bad things kept happening. In the meantime, the organization of parasites began to take an interest in Izumi, but Tamura informed them that he was living with a parasite and was a valuable specimen for their research. They decided to assign Izumi for her to monitor. Tamiza's child was also born and left with a babysitter. When she returned home, the babysitter didn't know how to calm the crying baby, but she just told the baby one word, calm, and it stopped immediately. The babysitter was so scared that she left quickly. She then called an inspector to ask him to monitor Izumi. Izumi was later confronted by some council members, and the inspector followed and filmed the scene as he dealt with all 4 of them. They were all hired by a woman, but they didn't know that the woman was AI. When he got to school, he noticed Satomi was avoiding him again. At this time, the inspector had given the results to Tamiza, and she asked him if he saw any difference between his right hand and his left hand, but there was none. So she knew Izumi had changed. When he got home, Izumi realized that he might have been acting a bit strange, because he was too calm about the recent tragic events. It also wanted him to be quiet because if he kept talking loudly, his dad would hear him. So he decided to go outside for a while. The inspector also followed him. He returned to the place where Kana was murdered, claiming he wanted to feel more sorrowful emotions. There, while touching the ground, Migi was spotted by the inspector. Migi noticed and immediately attacked to seize the camera while also killing the inspector. But Izumi stopped it, forcing it to separate to attack. But separating weakened it, and it couldn't finish the job. So it told Izumi that he had witnessed too many people die, so another one wouldn't matter. But he held back, causing Migi to give up because it was too late to chase. He had to go home with the camera. The next morning, on the street, he was worried about Miji's words that if the person he let go was a journalist or a government agent, he would definitely become a guinea pig. Anxiously, he rushed to school. He was worried that if the truth came out, his friends would look at him in fear and avoid him. His worrying made him not pay attention to the teacher's lecture, so the teacher told him to go home if he wasn't going to study, and he really went home. He remembered Migi's words that if he didn't become a guinea pig, other parasites would eliminate him to keep the common secret. He then tried to listen carefully and discovered that the inspector was still following him. So you ran out to the balcony to call him to compromise. But as soon as he saw you, he got scared and ran away. You intended to chase after him but stopped. You wondered when you had changed and why all this was happening to you. That night, you called Satomi out to meet. She had some worries she wanted to ask you about. She knew that on the day of the canceled date, you went to see Kana, and she wondered what big issue you were dealing with that you couldn't share with her. She planned to end things with you if you continued to keep everything secret. You also wanted to tell her, but Migi was awake at that moment. If you opened your mouth to speak, this hand would be the one to end Satomi. You had no choice but to keep quiet, even though you knew Satomi might break up with you after this. She scolded you for being so emotionless while lying to her. She went home, and Izumi could only stay silent and return home. Both you and Migi felt a little nervous about what just happened, because both had intended to do something the other didn't want Migi to see. Now they should investigate the inspector who was following both of them. But Migi had no intention of harming him, because it knew Izumi strongly opposed killing. So it decided to call an ally to help them tail the inspector. The only ally they had was an AI besides Uda. Uda was called over, and after hearing the situation, Migi showed Uda and the parasite the inspector's face so they would know to follow him. Uda also mentioned that he decided to name his parasite Joe. Meanwhile, the inspector reported back to Tamiza about investigating her. Seeing that, she told him to withdraw from the investigation because he was no longer valuable. But he knew Tamiza had some information and was aware of the incident with Izumi's hand. But she just left, causing him to stumble as he tried to chase after her. In an instant, she smiled lightly, and that laughter followed her all the way home. She realized that she had learned how to smile and continued to laugh maniacally. As for the inspector, after getting home and having a drink, his wife told him he should give up on this dangerous case because it seemed beyond his reach. But he refused to settle for being a nobody and chose to do something great. Next day, the inspector followed Izumi again. Of course, Uda was sitting in a car to observe and help Izumi catch the inspector, put him in the car and took him to a secluded place to talk. They then told the inspector to calm down and Izumi decided to tell him everything. He thought you should step out and accept being a guinea pig for the sake of humanity. But just then, Migi and Joe had to show up to threaten him. Migi informed him that Izumi was just a young man, but had witnessed so many deaths. Yet, it still struggles to survive until now, and parasitizes just like it. They have the right to live, and that right cannot be taken away by anyone. Besides, Migi has also suspected the one who made him investigate Izumi. I am sure it is Tamiza, Izumi's former teacher, who is also a parasite. So if he has any concerns, he should worry about her eliminating him to keep him silent. That evening, Tamiza contacted Izumi to arrange a meeting. Then she went to a university where Tamiza had arranged to meet. At that moment, she was attending a class to hear about human philosophies and thoughts on emotions, motherhood, and other things. She then went up to the rooftop to meet Izumi and did not hide the fact that she had hired the inspector. She chose this place to hide because her accomplices rarely come here, and she also wanted to learn a few things. She informed that the parasites have evolved, and their voting is to integrate into human life, but not in a peaceful coexistence way, rather like humans living with creatures they will eventually eat. She then talked about her child, and after rambling for a while, she mentioned that Izumi's mother was killed by a parasite, which made him furious. So she used the child as a shield if he intended to attack her. She then left. Meanwhile, Izumi, with pain in his chest, ran off and met a fortune teller. After reading his palm, she knew he had pain in his heart and needed to meet the person who caused him this pain. But he believed that he had dealt with the one who caused this pain. A few days later, the inspector had someone follow Tamiza and discovered she met a man. This person tracked the man and saw that he picked up a girl and went into a parking garage. As soon as he followed in, the guy revealed his true parasitic nature, and not long after, the inspector had to meet Izumi and asked him to follow him to that garage. Migi didn't sense anyone inside, so all three went in to investigate. Although there was nothing down there, Izumi could clearly smell the foul odor. Suddenly, Migi announced that someone was coming with prey. So Izumi and the inspector hid in a corner to see what the guy intended to do. Of course, he sensed his kind but didn't suspect much, but Izumi rushed out to tell the girl to run away. The parasite revealed its true face and killed the girl right before their eyes. Izumi forced him and Migi to fight. Migi told him to just move and dodge while it focused on the attack. Thanks to a good steed, Migi continuously hit the target and then dealt a powerful blow. Although they won, Izumi was not happy at all, having let someone die. The inspector could only vomit from the horror. Migi then had to do something to clean up this mess, and the inspector then knew to back off. He decided to give up, even though Izumi wanted him to continue participating in this fight with him, but he handed over the memory card of the footage to Migi to destroy. He decided to take the cow family far away to avoid the dangerous parasites. He was just a weak human and unable to confront those creatures. That night, he felt he had gone too far in wanting the inspector to help confront the parasites, as he was now very different from a normal person. He then decided to fight them by himself, as he was confident he could win in a one-on-one. The next day, he met Satomi again, and she continued to avoid him. Meanwhile, the group of parasites had started to see Izumi as a threat, so they decided to eliminate him as soon as possible. But Tamiza wanted them to at least bring back Izumi's body intact for her to study. That night, Izumi experienced a nightmare. By the morning, when he got to school, Izumi thought about how to make Migi fight alongside him. He thought he should create a situation where Migi had no choice but to fight for it to follow him. Then suddenly, Migi announced that a parasite was approaching. This time they were directly targeting Izumi, and there were 3 of them. He immediately ran out of school to avoid harming others. He met Satomi on the way and promised to keep her safe. She knew something was happening, but couldn't catch up with Izumi. Both ran quickly and knew the 3 parasites were not hurrying. So Migi suggested that they should split up because 3 would be too much. But now it was best for him to run, since Migi was exhausted. It would take 4 hours for it to wake up, so he should hurry and run now. He then had to take a taxi to get far away. Suddenly, a young man started chasing him. This young man had an expression that didn't look much like a parasite, but he knew about Izumi's arm, so he kept running. While running in the street, an old man offered him a ride. He worried that the old man was a parasite, but when he asked to be let off by the roadside, he still let him go. A moment later, a truck came speeding by. But it just passed, and the guy jumped down from there. At this point, Migi had also woken up and informed that the guy had 3 parasites inside him. Both of his arms could transform like Izumi's. Meanwhile, the inspector had to pay the price for getting too deep into this case, and the price he paid was his family. As for Izumi, he noticed that the parasite controlling the brain had also evolved significantly, as it could express emotions very similar to humans. Both sides battled, and Migi knew they would have a tough time winning because the enemy had too many blades. Migi couldn't transform into more, so Izumi had to turn and run to think of a way. Izumi was much faster, so he left him behind and sat down to rest. Migi doesn't know which part to aim for to attack, but at that moment he turns around and trips. Once again, Izumi notices that the legs seem to be the only vulnerable point of his body, so Migi decides to take a risk and aims for that, telling Izumi to dodge. Migi then moves forward and manages to swipe at his leg, but it doesn't get hurt at all, and Izumi is lucky not to get hit. Migi has understood enough to tell Izumi to keep running. Both of them run into the forest, and Migi explains that although there are 3 parasites in that body, 2 of them are responsible for protecting the whole body. The one controlling the head will manage and control the other 2. Since it's not fully developed yet, continuous imbalances occur as Izumi has seen. In other words, they still only need to target the head to attack. If the head is lost, the other 2 will be confused immediately. He then follows Migi's instructions and runs in circles around him. He will swing the knife away and pull the knife toward him, and then he has to change direction and rush at him just in time to catch him off guard. They succeed in cutting off the head. But what Migi didn't expect is that he doesn't die because his body has a total of 5 parasites, but only 2 control the head. If one falls off, another takes its place. The one that was just cut off has now returned to merge with the arm, and that second controller is the one that went to the market earlier. This one is even stronger and moves in a less predictable way. They temporarily escape, but 2 more people have lost their lives at the hands of the parasite. At this moment, the inspector has been interrogated by the police, and they are sure he has information about the parasites. Meanwhile, Izumi has managed to escape. Migi has stolen some money from the driver earlier so he can buy new things and find something to eat. Since it's a parasite, don't lecture it about ethics, because its goal is to keep you alive. While eating, he hears the news that the inspector has paid the price, so he immediately calls his dad to notify him. He needs to leave the house. Dad needs an explanation, so he is vague about the parasites coming. He understands, and when he knows his son is safe, he complies. As for the inspector, he has been visited by the government, and they need him to provide information to take revenge for his wife and children. He then requested to be taken to a place where he can calm down, and asked for some paper and pen to write down. Izumi now meets Migi in a dream, but it knows that he will forget when he wakes up, so it doesn't want to say much. Tamiza is currently trying to warn the parasites that humans are not easy to deal with right now. It might be that if they fight individually, humans stand no chance, but what they are up against is millions of humans, and if they are careless, they will definitely fail. Satomi is currently being given Izumi's pair of shoes by her 2 friends, so she has an excuse to go see Izumi and resolve some recent misunderstandings. That night, the inspector left the hotel and only left information for the government. As for the parasites, they have decided to eliminate Tammy because she is also slowly changing and becoming more like a human. That night, the inspector followed 3 parasites to take revenge. As for her, she suddenly did not enter the apartment but turned away. But he did not follow her and went into the apartment to wait. Meanwhile, the 3 parasites encountered 3 others who wanted to eliminate her. She admitted that they were right to intend to eliminate her and acted on instinct, but obviously, she would not let them take action easily, so she fled. She hid at a nearby construction site, but was still followed by them. Tamiza attacked the parasite in front of her and let half of it enter this person's body to cause chaos, while the other half ran in one direction. She was holding the body with half a head running around the street, causing others to panic. That couple later saw her and came to ask if she was a normal person. She had transformed into another face, but her intellect was no longer clear, and she revealed her identity as a parasite and then ran away. The main culprit kept following her. Meanwhile, the remaining half of Tamiza was wreaking havoc on the parasite's body and then jumped to the other parasite to disturb the one chasing the body. Noticing someone had died, they turned back and saw Tamiza controlling her companion's body. But she was only controlling the body. The head was still that parasite. This one sacrificed its companion to deal with Tamiza, but her body was behind and chopped off his head. Her plan was very simple. The parasite only strongly senses its kind if there is a hostile intent, so she merged into that parasite's body, causing him to aim at her and making her feel hatred. The hostility in front of him obscured the fact that her body was approaching him from behind. She then returned home to find that her son had been taken by the inspector. So the next day, she secretly went to Izumi's house, and while he was calling home for his father, she answered. He took advantage of his worry for his father to force him to go to the park, where the inspector had arranged to meet her. She then met Satomi outside the house. She wanted to know what dangerous thing Izumi was involved in. Tamiza did not say, but told her to rest assured because Izumi would be back soon. Walking down the road, Satomi was thinking about Izumi when she suddenly spotted him on the bus that had just passed. She turned back and caught sight of Tamiza. Tamiza noticed Satomi chasing her, so she ran away. Satomi soon lost track of Tamiza, while she went to meet the inspector at the park. He did not expect a monster like her to care for her child, but he was sure she had no love at all. Because if he harmed the child now, she would not suffer like he would. He was about to throw the child when he was immediately stabbed by Tamiza and caught the child. In fact, he was just testing, because a person like him would never be as cold-blooded as she was. At this moment, Miji sensed Tamiza and guided Izumi to look for her. Just then, the police helped that inspector find him and received news that the inspector's corpse was over there. The detective rushed over, and the inspector informed him that Tamiza was here and wearing white while holding a child. He sent people to search, and before dying, the inspector also informed the detective that he had a human partner who had lost his family to the parasites. The police searched around and investigated people wearing white and carrying small children here. Meanwhile, Tamiza had actually met Izumi. She revealed that she had killed nearly 40 people and had conducted many experiments. She knows how she appears in the eyes of humans and how humans appear in their eyes. At the same time, she realized that parasites are a weak species and cannot live without a host, so they can be seen as humans bullying them. It sounds a bit itchy, but it's true. She also warned both of them about the one who had caused trouble for both of them last time. He is Goto and is an experiment she created. Just then, the detective arrived. He recognized Izumi because he had been tracking him for a while. He now realized that both Tamiza and Izumi were related to the deceased inspector. He was sure right in front of him was Tamiza, because the inspector's blood was still on the child's clothes. He also asked Izumi if he remembered who he was. He pretended to be innocent and still remembered him, so he was sure he was human. Tamiza still denied, as if she knew nothing, so the detective decided to shoot her. Whether she told the truth or lied, he would still shoot. When the gun fired, she finally revealed her true self. Then, the surrounding police all opened fire. Tamiza, despite being hit, still chose to protect her child. Satomi nearby heard the gunfire and did not want to believe Izumi was involved in this, so she ran away but then chose to come back. Tamiza approached Izumi. He wanted to run, but she transformed into his mother to make him stop. The detective ordered the force to open fire. Tamiza stated that she now had the answer for herself. She truly knew this was both the beginning and the end of herself. It was the beginning of her humanity, and also the end of that very life. She entrusted the child to Izumi, and asked him to take care of the baby normally. She then collapsed and died. Izumi now understood one thing, that the fortune-teller had said he must meet the one who caused him pain, and that person was Tamiza. He had seen the image of his sacrificing mother in Tamiza. He now also realized what had been missing from him all this time, the thing that made him cold and indifferent to all death. Tears flowed once again from his eyes. Satomi also realized he had returned to the person he was before. He then handed the child over to the police while he was taken away. The next day, Satomi still didn't know when Izumi would come back, but he had returned to the person he was before, which was enough to make her happy. Izumi was now in a research facility with a detective. At that moment, they had brought a prisoner into a room to meet a few people, including Izumi. This man was quite cheeky, but it was known that he had the ability to distinguish between parasites and normal people. 4 people had been arranged before to test this man's ability, but he could see that all 4 were human. So he appeared so bored that he fell asleep. Until Izumi was called in, the detective suspected Izumi was the partner the inspector mentioned before he died. The prisoner was awakened. He was joking around, when suddenly he became serious and told Izumi to look him straight in the eye. Izumi began to tremble, because he didn't know if the one inside was human or a parasite. Iji was asleep, so he couldn't help him identify. As for the guy on the other side, the real reason he could distinguish between humans and parasites was that he was a murderer. He had played with countless humans and knew how they would react to him, but parasites were different. He could see the difference between humans and parasites just through their actions. He realized that what parasites did to humanity wasn't much different from how he committed his crimes. It was precisely because he followed a parasite to that basement that he was caught by the police. After a while, he told the detective that he saw something different in Izumi's eyes, but he thought it was just his imagination, because after a bit, he couldn't see anything anymore. Izumi and his father were then allowed to stay at a hotel. His father wondered if he wanted to adopt the child, but he wasn't sure, so he dropped the idea. When they returned to the room, Izumi discussed a few things with Migi, and it really still didn't understand Tamiza's actions. In the meantime, the detective had met another person who would join him in the upcoming hunt for parasites. The next morning, Izumi returned to school. He was now back to a normal school life with friends. During gym class, he ran extremely fast. When changing clothes, people noticed his scar, but they didn't want to ask about it. On the way home, he sat down and talked with Satomi about possibly taking university entrance exams. But on the way back, the detective came to ask for Izumi's help. Satomi was upset and wondered why it was always Izumi. Why couldn't he and everyone else live a normal life without being surrounded by danger? But Izumi still followed the detective to meet the new person. This scar-headed brother asked Izumi if he had any ideas to confront the parasites. Izumi remembered that Migi had mentioned flamethrowers. Although this weapon doesn't completely counter the parasites, if they unexpectedly see fire, they will be startled and disrupt their connection in the body. The case of Goto's 5 parasites is one example. If he is suddenly hit by fire, his body will lose connection for a short time, enough for them to counterattack. This scar-headed brother also found Izumi's idea somewhat noteworthy. The next day, the police and special forces surrounded the city hall, as they had information that the parasites were all gathered inside. Police deceived everyone by saying a dangerous criminal had escaped into the building and was on the roof, so they gathered everyone and brought them out in groups of 7. Izumi was brought in and saw the criminal from before was also there to assist with the observation. Izumi remembered that Tamiza had said the mayor was a parasite, and the mayor had sent the civilians out first. The first group was scanned with a 10-ray scan to determine if they were human or parasites, and then the first parasite revealed itself because the 10-ray image had no skull. But they did not act hastily. They waited for this parasite to go to the back of the line before quietly shooting it down, preventing it from counterattacking. Seeing this method was effective, they continued to apply it. The reason they needed so many buses was to evacuate civilians and to cover the process of disposing of the bodies. In there, the police only deceived the public that a criminal was threatening them with gunfire, while the parasites had realized what was happening but had no way to respond, and they had a plan. The scar-headed brother then noticed that no parasites had been discovered for a while, So he agreed with the detective to let the criminal observe directly. The Parasite mayor stated that there were still some shareholders on the upper floors, so he requested to go call them down. Obviously, they knew this request had ulterior motives, so they did not allow it. Just then, a Parasite requested to be evacuated and was taken out by the soldiers, but they walked over a sensor, so the inspection team had to order them to line up. When the criminal was brought in, he recognized the Parasite, but did not specify, causing people to accidentally shoot innocent individuals. His incorrect statement led to chaos. One Parasite suddenly attacked, causing the police to shoot mistakenly and damage the scanner. Two Parasites sacrificed themselves to help the others. Another Parasite stood up and caused panic by attacking innocent people and the police. The remaining ones all fled upstairs, and the scar-headed brother had to personally go in to control the situation. The young man immediately stood up to object. He was shot. Izumi could only feel helpless and do nothing. The scar-headed brother then searched everywhere and took the criminal with him. According to those lying on the first floor, once again a Parasite rose up and used humans as shields. But the outcome was still that both would die. The mayor met Goto again, and both decided to act according to their own will from that moment on. The scar-headed brother had now divided his forces into two wings. He would lead one wing and let the murderer go with the other wing to identify. He was confident that he was able to identify the Parasites. The murderer in this wing then encountered a couple in the act and realized they were human. Meanwhile, the scar-headed brother discovered a Parasite and shot immediately because he knew it was a Parasite. He stated that now if he encountered AI, he would shoot regardless of whether they were human or Parasites. Hearing the gunshots, Izumi finally understood why Tamiza said that humans were bullying weak creatures like the Parasites. The wing of the murderer had now encountered Goto. The murderer recognized the danger and ran quickly. Meanwhile, Goto had sent soldiers to a larger room, gave them 2 minutes to shoot, and although his body was full of holes at that moment, he still didn't die, and even threw their bullets back at them. He saw one person still alive, and that person had caught him in the face. He gave the soldier the last 30 seconds to do whatever he wanted. In the other wing, the soldiers had now encountered the mayor. The scar-headed brother ordered them to eliminate him immediately and not let him escape. The mayor then rambled about how humans were the true Parasites harming this world, and then he was shot dead. After checking, they found out he was indeed human and had chosen to support the Parasites. Goto had also made his way here, and the soldiers had only time to report back to the scar-headed brother. Meanwhile, the criminal had shot the inspector accompanying him to escape, because he was sure that Goto had cleared the path for him. Goto had also taken care of all the soldiers, and Migi told Izumi it was time for him to go home, because humans would always win in the end. However, at this moment, the soldiers of the scar-headed brother were completely helpless against Goto. He moved very quickly and lured them into a narrow space, then used humans as shields to advance. Goto had to send soldiers to the rooftop and fired 2 shells to slow Goto down. When he got to the rooftop, he was all alone. Goto followed him up and easily blocked the bullets by manifesting a shield. He then reduced the scar-headed brother to nothing. Izumi was about to leave when the head of the scar-headed brother fell off. Goto also came down here and realized Izumi was part of this incident. He would take your life to complete his mission in the most perfect way, but it will be next time because he is tired now. He just walked away. The detective knows Izumi is hiding something again. You keep denying it, and then see an image of your head suffering the same fate. The scar-headed guy wakes up. Migi knows you just had a nightmare, but soon the nightmare named Goto will come for you. You start to worry, but Migi wants you to rely on the military, even though you refuse. You then go outside and discover Migi has fallen asleep. You fear Goto will attack. At this moment, the fear makes you hallucinate about AI. The 2 Goto guys bump into you and demand you apologize. You comply, but they keep pushing, causing you to fight back. You then run into Satomi and hug her to feel less scared, but you make her feel scared and push you away. Then go to the park to sit, and Satomi comes looking for you. She invites you to her house because there is no AI today, and what's meant to happen will happen. A boy and girl in one room will surely lead to something. Izumi decides to change. You once called Migi cold-blooded, but you have also trampled on everything to survive. But now, you will decide to face it all, to resolve everything. Next day, both of them sensed Goto and stole a car to drive up the mountain, because this place will have fewer people. Goto also drives after them and gets hit by the car falling on him. But that's not enough, so Izumi has to run again. Migi tells Izumi to stop, because running forever isn't the solution. They then decide to make a plan. Izumi will have a weapon, this lighter, while Migi will separate to fight. Migi then spreads his body across the trees to deceive Goto's senses. Izumi will become Yang Guo and hide in a corner to wait for the opportunity. Since Migi has separated, they must strike quickly before Migi shrinks back. Goto just wants to find Izumi, because if you die, Migi will also be finished. Goto at this moment taunts to draw Izumi out, but Migi imitates your voice to trick Goto and then lets you throw the fire spear at him. You hit his leg, and Migi lunges out to decapitate him, but the cut isn't deep enough, allowing him to continue regenerating. Migi tells Izumi to run and forget about it. When Goto tries to stab Izumi, Migi slices his leg so Izumi can really escape. It chooses to sacrifice itself, because it feels happy to experience many events with Izumi. When Goto recovers, Migi has already withered away. Izumi is running when he slips and falls into the river. You wander into the house of an old woman that night. She lets you in. She feeds you and bandages your eye wound. She has no family, so she lets you be her grandson. During this time, you stay with her for a few days, and she shows you the pile of garbage the city dumped here. He stayed at his grandmother's house for a few days, and then decided to return soon to tell his father everything that had happened to his hand and with Migi. That night, he dreamed of a small cell of Migi. He woke up. That small cell had grown an eye on his hand, but it was not developed enough to think and speak. So the next day, he asked his grandmother for permission to return. Suddenly, people from the village came to inform her that a monster on the mountain had eaten a villager, and they suspected Izumi. But she testified for Izumi, so they had to report it to the police. The police went up the mountain and saw the corpse. They could only turn pale. Meanwhile, Izumi had confessed to her that the monster was led there by him, so he would leave to prevent more deaths. He wanted to confront Goto, but she was angry with him for acting as if he was something special. Not at all. He knew her harsh words were meant to stop him from going to sacrifice himself, because to her, he was the only family she had. That night, he still left, so she advised him not to give up too early and to do his best. He must survive at all costs. She wanted him to take something for protection, so he reluctantly took the rusty iron rod with him. Then he went up the mountain to confront Goto. He knew he had no chance against that monster, but right now he felt more optimistic and confident than ever. He then saw Goto asleep, hugging himself in the forest. He knew he couldn't sense him, so he approached to strike at his neck, but he woke up just in time and forced him to hide. He knew he had better senses than him, so he hid in a tree and prepared to stab him from head down to neck. But just as he jumped out, Goto grabbed the stake and threw him away. He called out to see if Migi was inside him. Then he informed him that Migi was dead. It truly made him angry, and he ran to punch him. But Goto showed him what it meant to be punched. Then he was blown away to a pile of trash, and then he decided to show him what despair was. He was a bit bored because he couldn't give him the fight he wanted. Feeling helpless, his grandmother's words gave him more willpower. He remembered having seen him bleed when shot, so he believed that was his weak point. He took a nearby stake, and he didn't know if he could stab that spot. He lunged and stabbed him in the waist, causing him real pain. He had a temporary chance to run. In the end, Goto still found him. He was angry to be harmed by a weak human, so he demanded to take his life immediately. But just then, Migi inside him rebelled. It struggled to return and rejoin Izumi's hand. Goto was now starting to lose stability, because the stake he stabbed him with was poisoned, causing all the parasites in his body to revolt, to seek life. And in that instability, Migi only needed one cut to make his body explode. Migi had informed him. Goto had absorbed it to increase his power. It had lain dormant in Kia, but thanks to Izumi's stab, it woke up and stirred a little in Goto, before returning to the stake he stabbed from this pile of trash. The trash here was burned, so some very toxic substances were also produced. Migi admitted that indeed humans are still the most powerful creatures in the world. Suddenly, Migi announced that Goto was trying to resurrect him, then turned back and knew his resurrection ability was 5510. But Migi would not intervene and let Izumi decide. He looked somewhat pitiful. He remembered Tamiza's words and realized that indeed humans are the poison of this world. It seems that the parasites created were to eliminate that poison. The proof is that Goto, despite being so strong, was still killed by the poison. He intended to let it live because he felt he had no right to decide his life just because he deserved it or not, because he could harm humanity, but to this world he did not. Then he selfishly decided to go back and deal completely with Goto because he didn't want him to live and harm the things important to him, the villagers. After that, there was a commotion because they had found the corpse of the monster, and the old lady saw the stake placed in front of the house and knew Izumi had succeeded. He was now also on his way back. After some time, Izumi noticed that the remaining parasites had gone quiet because the battle at the town hall had shown them the price to pay if they touched humanity. So they chose to integrate and then changed their diet to resemble humans. That night, Migi entered Izumi's dream to inform him that from now on it would sleep forever to observe his body develop. It believed he would live well with his new life. Hearing of Migi's departure, Izumi was reminded of the images of those who had died before. Migi was surprised because in Izumi's eyes the people he saw were different from when it saw them. It believed he would forget this dream, so he should try to forget it when he woke up. However, when he woke up in the morning, he still couldn't forget Migi. Sometime later, Izumi failed the university entrance exam, so he had to go to the park to study with Satomi. He told Uda about the situation of the parasites, but said nothing about Migi. He now understood that humans could never understand other creatures if they continue to impose their perspective on them. But one thing is certain, that humans and other creatures were all born on the same planet. He and Satomi were then somewhere when the escaped criminal noticed them and recognized Izumi. Then, while walking down the street, he saw someone who looked like the murderer he had encountered but still thought he was mistaken. However, the further he went, the more he noticed that the person was following him, so he was really sure it was him. He ran to find him, but he took the opportunity to kidnap Satomi. He chased after him. After reaching the rooftop, there was a couple there. The man saw this guy with a knife and immediately shouted and logged out. The girl also left right after that. When Izumi caught up, he wanted him not to do anything rash. The murderer only needed one thing from Izumi. He wanted him to answer what he really was. Was he a human or a monster like those parasites? The reason he asked was that he believed killing people was the true instinct of humanity. The fact that humans have forgotten this instinct has caused a sudden population explosion, so what he does is just living true to his nature. The reason he needed an answer from Izumi was that he knew he had a monster inside him. Satomi couldn't argue because she had seen the scar on Izumi's body. Izumi decided to admit it, but Satomi wanted him to ignore what he said. Because no matter how he was, to her, he was still a human, and only someone like him was a monster. He saw that she was also tough, so he had a game to play with her. He then had to rush in, and he threw Satomi off the rooftop and stabbed her in his hand. He managed to punch him in the mouth, but couldn't catch Satomi. Then, feeling helpless, he saw the image of Migi. It told him that if he was going to pull up, he should do it quickly because it was tired of holding on. He felt that he had a grip, and was sure that Migi was helping him. He pulled Satomi up, and suspected that Satomi had seen Migi. He confessed to Satomi that he had once thrown the dog into the trash can, but later regretted it, and buried it. She also knew about that, because she had always been watching him. Others had also come looking, and found a dead body up here. Izumi was able to breathe a sigh of relief, because a stable life was about to return to him.